40 years old, still single, no partner. Isn't there anyone out there who could be her Prince Charming? Those were the words my younger sister Mandy spoke during her wedding speech, words that shook the very foundation of my life. And yet, it was in that moment of humiliation that my true destiny quietly began. My name is Jenny. I work as a nurse in my hometown. I'm 40, single. That was the label my family had stamped on me. But I had someone very important in my life, someone I had promised to marry. His name was Scott, 2 years younger than me, a gentle, sincere man. Even on nights when I was drained from work, just hearing his voice healed me, and we shared the little joys of everyday life together. The days I spent with him were irreplaceable, filled with peace and comfort. On our 7th anniversary, after dinner at home, he quietly went down on one knee in the living room. He pulled out a small velvet box, opened it to reveal a ring, and said, "I want to walk through the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Caught off guard by his words, I felt, for the first time, that maybe I really did deserve happiness. But that happiness did not last forever. It began when Scott suddenly stopped contacting me. One day, I received a short message, "I can't trust you anymore." That was the last thing I ever heard from him. No explanation, just silence. Confused and desperate, I sent him email after email, called him again and again, but he never replied. Every day, I clutched my phone, hoping every notification would be from him, only to sink into disappointment. Waiting for words that never came, my heart slowly and steadily broke apart. From the day Scott vanished from my life without warning, I sank deeper into grief and a crushing sense of loss. Had the man I loved betrayed me? Or had something unexpected happened to him? No matter how much I blamed myself, I found no answer. At night, his final words replayed endlessly in my head, and I could barely sleep. At work, I forced a calm smile, but inside, I was hollow. Before I knew it, a whole season had passed. Then, one day, 6 months later, I received a message from Mandy. "I'm getting married. Please come to the wedding." With a smiling emoji attached. Her cheerful words reopened wounds I had tried so hard to bury. To be honest, I didn't have the strength to celebrate her from the heart. With Scott's disappearance still unresolved and my heart still in pieces, the thought of smiling and congratulating my sister felt impossible. And yet, I decided to go. As her sister, as her family, I felt at least a duty to witness such an important moment in her life. And the day of the wedding arrived. With a flutter of nerves in my chest, I made my way to the venue. Dressed in clothes I wasn't used to wearing, I quietly stepped through the doors. What unfolded before me was another world, lavish, dazzling, overflowing with luxury. Crystal chandeliers glittered from the ceiling, fresh flowers bloomed on every table, and live violins filled the air with elegance. Guests in glamorous attire laughed and chatted over glasses of champagne, but all of it felt like a distant reality to me. I sat quietly in a corner, trying to be invisible, like a shadow that didn't belong. Then the ceremony began. As the guests looked on in silence, the doors slowly opened to the sound of solemn music, and in that instant, the groom entered. My breath caught, and it felt as though time itself had frozen. A cold tightness gripped my chest, my heartbeat thundered in my ears. Because standing there, walking down the aisle, was Scott, the man I had once loved with all my heart, the man who had vowed to share his life with me. I couldn't process it. I couldn't accept it. All I could do was stare in disbelief, my mind blank. My mind went completely blank, unable to grasp a single thought, yet in the midst of that confusion, a memory resurfaced with startling clarity. It was about a year ago. Scott and I were strolling through the city on a day off when we happened to run into Mandy. The moment she saw Scott by my side, her eyes sparkled, not with her usual playful light, but with something stronger, sharper. "Wow, Jenny, who's that?" "He's so handsome," she exclaimed, practically buzzing with excitement. Back then, I thought she was just complimenting my boyfriend. I even felt proud, maybe even smug. But now I realize, hidden behind her words was the gleam of someone eyeing prey. From that day on, Mandy often asked about Scott. "What's he like? Are you two going out again?" Each of those questions now carries a different weight, stabbing into my chest with malice I could never have imagined. Never in my wildest dreams did I think Mandy's words back then, or her curiosity about Scott, would one day destroy my life in such a cruel way. Perhaps noticing my gaze, Scott glanced at me for just a fleeting moment as he walked toward the altar. In his eyes there was not the slightest trace of the love once meant for me, only a cold light, as if rejecting my very existence and casting me aside. That merciless look cut deeply into my heart. Then, as the solemn yet cheerful wedding march began, the doors at the back of the hall opened slowly. A spotlight shone upon Mandy, radiant in a pure white wedding gown, smiling as brightly as the sun itself while taking her first step down the aisle. She looked like a painting come to life, bathed in light and blessings. To me, that dazzling brilliance burned like fire in my eyes. Standing together at the altar, Scott and Mandy looked like a vision too surreal to be real, like a nightmare unfolding before me. A reality that denied my very existence, cruel beyond words, played out right in front of me. The sight of them together was a reality far too cruel for me to bear. And yet, I refused to look away. I glared at them, searing the image of their vow and kiss into my memory. Because I knew this pain would one day fuel my revenge against my sister. When the reception began, Scott and Mandy shone in the spotlight. Their table was lavishly adorned with flowers, as if symbolizing a bright future ahead of them. Mandy's white gown glittered with sequins, amplifying her radiant smile. Scott held her hand and answered the guests' congratulations with his best smile. Every moment, every scene, struck me as unbearably cruel. The happier they looked, the deeper my heart sank. The cheerful music, the endless words of blessing, they all sounded like mockery to me. The hall felt like a gilded cage of happiness, one in which I had no place. Around me, guests laughed and chatted, savoring their meals. To me, it was another world. I didn't care if behind those smiles they pitied me. I didn't care if, hidden among their chatter, there were words mocking me. None of these people would ever have a place in my life again. With that thought, I realized there was no reason to stay. Quietly, I rose from my seat. I wanted to slip away unnoticed. I could no longer pretend to smile and offer blessings. Each step toward the exit felt heavy as lead, my vision blurred by tears. And then, Mandy's bright voice pierced me from the microphone. "Wait a second, Jenny." It was as if a spotlight fell solely on me. I felt every gaze in the room land upon me at once. There was no escape. I stood frozen, like a criminal awaiting judgment. My heart pounded against my throat, and I forgot how to breathe. What's happening? What is she going to say? Dread consumed me, and my fear became certainty. Mandy smirked, raised the microphone to her lips, and delivered words that mocked my existence, that denied my life, a public execution. "As you all know, my sister Jenny is 40, single, and has no partner. Do you think Prince Charming will ever come for her? Or will she spend the rest of her life alone?" Her words struck my ears like a whip. The hall fell silent, then rippled with whispers. And within that murmur, I clearly caught the sound of stifled laughter. Those chuckles cut through me like knives, piercing straight into my heart. My face burned, my ears rang with a piercing whine. Humiliation. Every other emotion seemed to vanish, as if it had been erased from me entirely. Only the memories of my childhood came flooding back, one after another, in vivid detail. I lost my father when I was very young. From that day on, my mother's affection flowed almost entirely to Mandy. My mother, and my sister Mandy, who always mocked me. Mandy was 7 years younger than me, and she had always been beautiful. As a child, she was a sweet little sister who followed me everywhere, but as we grew, our relationship warped. My mother showered her with love, raising her up as the perfect daughter. Mandy was always in the spotlight, while I grew up constantly compared to her. "Why can't you be more like Mandy?" I heard that refrain again and again. No matter what I did, my mother never praised me, yet she celebrated every little success Mandy achieved. Perhaps that's what inflated Mandy's belief that she was superior to me in every way. In time, she began, perhaps unconsciously, to tear me down in order to secure her own place. If I made a mistake, she would rush to tell our mother, basking in a sense of superiority by humiliating me. Sometimes she would use my belongings without asking, or hide things I treasured. What I first brushed off as childish pranks eventually became deliberate mockery once she reached adolescence. To her, I was nothing more than a prop to highlight her own shine. Belittling me became her way of affirming her superiority, until it was second nature. Still, I refused to surrender to my family's judgment. I chose the path I had dreamed of since childhood. I became a nurse. No matter how drained my spirit felt at home, once I put on my white coat at the hospital, I could finally be myself. When I was able to ease a patient's pain, or draw out their smile, I felt my life had value. Home was never a place of peace for me, it was a place where I always lived in Mandy's shadow. Yet even in that environment, I found purpose, and I carved out my path with my own strength. That's why Mandy's words today felt like she was trampling over everything I had built. Her wicked smile burned itself into my memory. And then, as if to twist the knife, my mother took the microphone and said something that struck me like a physical blow. "Everyone, listen. Let's auction off Jenny's future partner. We'll start the bidding at $0. Her words were violence beyond imagination. The hall, once filled with awkward murmurs, erupted in laughter. The sound echoed inside my ears, swirling around my head until I felt faint. My strength drained from my body. It was as if my dignity as a human being had been stripped away. My vision blurred, tears pressed to spill over, but I forced them back. I bit my lip, clenched my fist so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Betrayal from family cuts deeper than betrayal from strangers. My heart shattered into pieces, my soul torn apart. I wondered if I was truly that powerless, that worthless. Why am I alive? What is the purpose of my existence? Those questions consumed me. Silently, I pulled out a handkerchief, dabbing away the tears before anyone noticed. Still, I felt every eye in the room stabbing into me. I knew then, I would never forget this humiliation for as long as I lived. My steps were unsteady, my vision cloudy, but I forced myself toward the exit. I vowed never to return to this family again. My life felt as though it had ended here, in this very hall. A wave of resignation threatened to swallow me whole. And then, "I will." A voice rang out, strong and clear. I turned, and there stood Scott's younger brother, Alex, his hand raised high. His voice carried such power that it silenced the entire room. Alex looked straight into my eyes, standing tall as if to shield me. Shocked, I was left speechless. Why would he? In his eyes burned a fierce light, more like anger than anything else. Mandy's eyes widened. My mother looked bewildered. Amidst the tension, Alex strode over to Mandy and snatched the microphone from her hand. Every gaze turned to him. He drew in a deep breath, looked straight at my mother, at Scott, and at Mandy, and spoke, calm, but firm. "Everyone, today there have been several remarks made to ridicule Jenny. But I cannot stay silent." The hall grew taut with silence. To me, Jenny is the person who once saved me. A hush fell over the room. 7 years ago, when I was 17, my mother was hospitalized with cancer for a long time. Back then, I struggled to fit in at school. I skipped classes, I was lost, I had no place where I belonged. But there was one nurse in that hospital who showed me kindness. That nurse was Jenny. He smiled faintly as he continued. She wasn't just caring for my sick mother, she spoke kindly to me, too. She treated me not as some troubled high school kid, but as a person. For me, going to the hospital became the only time I felt safe. I found myself opening up to her about struggles I could tell no one else. The hall grew steadily quieter, every laugh and murmur fading away. Jenny saved me. That's why today, here in front of you all, I want to say this: Jenny is not just a 40-year-old single woman. She is someone who saves people, who supports them, who has been essential in my life. Alex's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I couldn't sit by and watch her be humiliated, so I'll say it now, I want to walk through life with Jenny. As shock rippled through the hall, Alex stepped toward me, steady and sure, and gently took my hand. No longer as the person who once helped me. Now that I've grown, now that I understand my own heart. I love you, not as an idea, but as the woman you are. All I could do was look into his eyes. The boy I once knew at 17 now stood before me as a man, unafraid, ready to face his life head-on. That sight pierced me to my very core. My chest warmed, my throat tightened, and words would not come. I remembered Alex fighting back tears at his mother's bedside, and Scott, his older brother, trying desperately to appear strong. That was, in fact, how Scott and I first met. At 31, he too had been carrying the weight of his family, and in me, he saw something that drew him closer. Finally, I managed to force out words. I never knew you felt that way about me. Alex gave a small smile and squeezed my hand once more. That's why, this time, I want to be the one to stand by you. I couldn't respond. I only nodded quietly. Then I felt the shift in the room. My mother's face had turned pale, her lips pressed tight in silent condemnation. A silent reproach, too sharp to put into words. Realizing it, Mandy averted her eyes, her body trembling. Friends glanced at each other in confusion, phones in hand, whispering. Wait. Was that story real? Is this wedding even going to hold together? The murmurs spread, changing the atmosphere of the hall. Amid the growing stir, I stood up. My throat tightened with rising emotion. I turned slowly toward my mother and Mandy and spoke a single line. I'm done being family with you. This is the end. Goodbye. My mother looked stunned, unable to protest. My sister's eyes widened before she cast them down. All the humiliation, sorrow, anger, and the sudden sense of release I had carried within me converged in that one sentence. Alex gently clasped my hand and pulled me forward with steady strength. I gripped his hand back, never once looking behind me, and walked toward the exit. The guests who filled the hall looked on with shock, with fleeting sympathy, with doubt, a mixture of emotions etched on their faces as they watched us go. At the doorway, Alex stepped down beside me, sensing my unease. You okay? He asked softly. I exhaled a shaky breath and stepped outside. What struck me most was not that Alex had stood up for me, it was that he had called me his savior in front of everyone. His words shook me to the core. Back then, I had thought I was only doing my duty as a nurse. Each day, I had acted simply with the desire to help whoever stood before me. Yet that simple act had remained etched so deeply in someone's heart, changing their life. Until now, I had never realized it. Through Alex's words, I finally understood that the person I had been back then had brought real light into someone's life. That realization seeped quietly into the depths of my chest. I had spent years convinced I was worthless. But I saw now that my actions had mattered. That I had once been someone's hope. That truth filled me with a warm light inside. For that alone, life had been worth living. The next morning, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months, Scott. I froze. After 6 months of silence, what could he possibly want? And yet, I couldn't bring myself to ignore the call. It's been a while, he began. Jenny, I'm so sorry. I wanted to reach out so many times, but I was too scared. I see. And now? What is it you want? After a pause, his voice came, awkward and halting. Mandy told me you were seeing someone else. She suddenly showed me a photo of you talking with some guy, looking close. I believed her. That's impossible. I never cheated on you. You're right. I was wrong. I should never have doubted you. But at that time, I was weak. Even your distance, I misread it, convinced myself it was proof. And then Mandy said she wanted to support me, to heal me from the hurt. I let myself believe her. He stopped, let out a long breath, and went on. But yesterday, at the reception, seeing Mandy ridicule you like that, it hit me. The woman standing beside me wasn't the one I thought I knew. If that's her true nature, then I've made a terrible mistake. I realized I can't trust her. His eyes dropped to the floor. So after the reception, I confronted her. Asked if the story about you cheating was true. And she admitted it was all a lie. The photo was just a split-second shot, twisted to look suggestive. She said it herself, it was all a setup to drive us apart. So right there, I told her. I can't marry her. I can't be with someone who would do that. As I listened, everything I had buried came surging up. The pain of betrayal, the silent abandonment, the loneliness of those months, all poured out at once. It took you this long to realize my so-called affair was just Mandy's lie? And what of it? Do you have any idea how I'm supposed to feel when you come to me now, saying you were wrong, that you've called off the wedding? Scott had no answer, only silence. From the day you cut me off without warning, I was left abandoned for 6 months, not knowing a thing. Do you know how many times I blamed myself? How many nights I woke from nightmares, shaken and in tears? And still, you never tried to learn the truth. You trusted only my sister's words and betrayed me. Did you ever, even once, try to hear my side? My voice wavered with emotion. And the worst of all, you showed up as the groom at my sister's wedding, without me knowing anything. Do you have any idea what that moment did to me? My words trembled, laced with anger, sorrow, and the ache of emotions I had tried to suppress. Scott stayed silent, his eyes fixed on mine. He didn't avert his eyes, only looked straight at me. His gaze was heavy with regret, yet he seemed determined to face my words without running. For just a moment, I felt myself waver at the sight of him. But the wound deep inside my chest would not allow forgiveness so easily. After a long silence, Scott finally spoke. I truly am sorry. I never meant for things to end this way. I only realized how much you meant to me after I lost you. But it's too late now, isn't it? Yes. It's too late, Scott. You were once an important part of my life, but that chapter has ended. Thank you. And goodbye. I hung up the phone. Strangely, my heart was calm. A few days later, to my surprise, a video of Mandy and my mother's behavior at the wedding spread across social media. Comments flooded in, "This is disgusting. How could anyone say that?" Mandy's shallow speech and my mother's $0 auction remark quickly went viral in the worst way. The friends who once surrounded them drifted away one after another, and even our relatives, I was told, had cut ties, saying, "We can't be involved with a family like that anymore." Now, Mandy and my mother were completely isolated from society, with not a single ally left, or so our relatives told me in a detached tone. Their downfall bled into their work as well. My mother quietly resigned from the social club she had served for years, avoiding public life altogether. Mandy found herself isolated at her job, soon quit, and, unable to find new work, retreated into our family home. Relatives told me she rarely left the house. Once envied as part of a glamorous family, they now walked the town with their faces down, shunned by all. I had no words for it. But I felt no sympathy. They were simply reaping what they had sown. As for me, from that day forward, I began a new life. Drawing on my years of nursing experience, and with Alex's support, I founded a small nursing care office. Listening to patients, engaging with the community, gave me a renewed sense of purpose. The office gradually gained momentum, and before long, we were receiving gratitude from many people. Alex stayed by my side through it all. A year later, as equal partners, respecting and supporting each other, we built a modest home in the suburbs. It wasn't extravagant, but within those walls lived something genuine, a true family. I no longer think of myself as a shame. I am loved, I am needed, and I finally believe I have the right to live as myself. This is my place. And from here, our new life begins.